Hey guys, this is Greg with JHDrums.com, bringing you a quick tutorial video on drum bussing. As you can see here, we went ahead and we've recorded our tracks for our drums, in this case 8 tracks consisting of kick, snare, top, snare bottom, 3 toms, and our 2 overheads. So we'll take a look in our mixer here, and really this is the first thing I do is create drum buses for similar sources on the kit. In this case, we have overhead left and right, which are going to be similar sources. We have snare top and bottom, which will be a similar source. And then we want to create a bus for the entire drum kit, which is going to ultimately be our final source for the drums or our drum bus. Uh, the way we approach this, at least in Logic, now I am using Logic Pro 9. You can do this in any DAW, Cubase, Pro Tools, or whatever have you. But for Logic, what you're going to want to do is you can select both similar sources. In this case, these are the overheads. And you're going to left click and hold, and we're going to go to the bus, and we're going to select a bus track versus our standard stereo output. Now, when we do this, we'll see in our mixer window, it actually creates an auxiliary bus track for us. And if you pay attention here, you can see now that our outputs for both overhead left, overhead right are bus 1, and this new spanking auxiliary track is inputted from bus 1. And we want to make sure that that output is going to stereo for now. So that's how we create a bus track. Let's go ahead and title this overhead bus. And we'll do the same thing for the snare top and bottom. So we'll left click on our output to go to bus 2. And again, you can see here, bus 2 is now the output of both these tracks. The input of our new aux track is bus 2. And we want to make sure the output of that bus is stereo for now as well. And we'll rename this one snare bus. Go figure. And finally, what we want to do is for all the remaining tracks that aren't in a bus, we're going to want to send to our primary bus, which is going to be our drum bus. So we'll create another auxiliary track. We're going to call this the drum bus. And you can see here now that this is our kick track. The output is bus 3. The input of our drum bus is bus 3 as well. And we're going with stereo out, which is good. So that's our kick. We've got our toms left. Going to make sure those go to bus 3 or the drum bus as well. And the auxiliary tracks that we created, remember the output we set to stereo. Initially, we were going to want to set those to bus 3 as well. So actually, we'll select both of our bus tracks, both overhead and snare, and make sure those are going to be sent to the drum bus as well. Okay, so what does this do? This allows us to condense our workflow. With similar sources summed to a track, in particular, like this, the overhead tracks. We have 2 separate tracks that are now going to a sum stereo track from mono to stereo, and it allows us to adjust the EQ or compression or reverb or whatever we want to do to both these tracks without having to duplicate plugins. That's really a huge benefit of this using buses on the drums or with any instrument in a mix. Same thing with snare compression. We can apply any plugins that we want and our overall drum bus. So now if we actually take a listen to, let's go ahead and bring these down to 6 just to match the rest of our if I can get it there. Match the rest of our tracks. If we listen to just the drum bus, you'll notice that I can completely control everything via just this one fader now. And that's the beauty of using buses. And again, I can apply an effect if I want. If I want to compress the drum track, you can hear that pop out a little bit. Let's say we just want, just a real slight compression, 2-to-1 ratio, just touching it. And again, that's just an example, nothing too specific, but you could see with it bypassed, obviously the compression isn't there. And unbypassed, it brings the drums out. And what that's actually doing is applying compression to the entire kit. So that's just one benefit of busing. It's the best way to start organizing your mix, particularly with drums, and it allows you to approach things in a much more universal sense, to where you don't have to copy plugins over and over and over, and you have much more control of the drums in a full mix. So if you get to a point where you're mixing an entire song, guitars, piano, vocals, etc., you actually have just one individual track where you can actually hide all this other stuff that you fine-tuned and just adjust the drums via a single bus. And that's the idea. It makes our lives easier, and that's what we want. And that is drum busing in itself. If you are a Logic user, one thing I would recommend doing is, well, if you're like me, you're a little OCD, so you've got to, of course, color code your buses to what the colors of your tracks are. Drum bus is going to be a hot pink. And this is particular to Logic as well. If you want to visually move these around, in this case, our overhead bus is already where it needs to be. But say we wanted to move our snare bus over here so that we have more of a visual line of our tracks. What we do is we right-click and create an arrange track. And what that'll do is bring up the track in the arrange window. And we just grab it, click and hold, and then drag to where we want it to show up. So now if we go back to our mixer, we can see that our snare bus has moved right next to our snare top and bottom tracks. And that's just a workflow thing. If that's what you want to do, that's definitely a good way to make things look nicer and neater and easier to work with. But that's just one thing I wanted to point out. So if you're gonna start mixing drums, the first thing you need to do is bus your tracks, get them organized, make your life easier. And I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments below, and look forward to more mixing tutorials from JHDrums.com. Thanks so much for your time, guys. Look forward to seeing you.